Hey guys, good evening. This is Coach Simon with Trade and Perform Coaching, doing the trade review for ES for Monday the 25th. So a couple of things that I want to uh, go out of the gate. First, let me cover the legalese. Trading futures involves substantial risk and is not suitable for all investors. Past performance is not indicative of future results. And if you'd like to trade futures, please make sure you consult with an investment professional prior to opening a futures account. Make sure that you can tolerate the risks, which are substantial. You can lose actually every single penny you put into a futures account quite easily if you do not know what you're doing. So that's the disclaimer. This is for educational purposes only. And so let's get to the education part. So one of the things that I look for when I'm coming into a trading day, fairly straightforward, is I look for whether NQ is leading or trailing, right? And today's particular setup left me pretty confused. We've come off of two balanced days, right, which are days where the market just kind of traded up and down through the whole range, really didn't go anywhere, right? We've been unable to, there's an open gap sitting above near this 1914, 1916 area. We've been unable to close that gap. All of this is unauctioned above. And then below, when we're coming to the day, we had this entire unauctioned area that was highlighted here all the way down to the open gap at 1863, 1861. So we are coming off of two balance days. Normally we would look for a range, expansion of range after two balance days, right? We have two poorly auctioned areas, or actually unauctioned areas, above and below. So we knew that one of those two areas were going to get attention. We just couldn't figure out which one of those areas was going to get done first. And so we start to look for clues once the day starts off. So we saw that ES obviously opened weaker. We closed right up here on Friday at just over 1898. And we were obviously gapped down and we're unable to fill the gap. However, one of the things I do is I look immediately to what NQ is doing. And if you look on NQ, you'll see that we never ever got close to Friday's lows. As a matter of fact, I would say it was leading the entire day. It opened. We had a gap, almost actually we came right to a gap fill, rolled off. It still wasn't ready to roll over. Came back and tested the high from Friday. And even once we broke below the initial balance, right, we trapped back into range and pushed all the way back up. So if you're looking for guidance from NQ, you would kind of conclude, well, hey, NQ is actually relatively strong, and perhaps if NQ can hold above and get above the open gap, ES would follow along. Conversely, while we were getting strength early on in NQ, we were getting weakness in ES. Now, these reviews are geared towards people that are in the room, so what we're looking to do from the review is to see where could have the improvement decision process, the decision process, where it could have improved, right? And so the first thing that I look at, I was going, okay, these two markets, right? This market right here. Let's see if I can get this here real quick. Well, I don't have a drawing tool, so we'll have to work without the drawing tool. But this market here, ES, is simply not in balance with NQ, right? So the first thing that tells me is, hey, it's going to be a little bit difficult. And then look at the range, right? If we pull up a free chart, and I think I've got one here. And if you look at the 5 minutes here, let's erase everything. This is from this morning. I don't need all the retraces on there. Okay, so if you look at the ranges we've had in the first hour, right? This is approximately 9:30. You can see that we're covering almost from 1850 to 1830, 20 points worth of range. If you look here, we're covering from 1860 all the way down to 1840, 20 points worth of range. Look at the last 2 days. All of a sudden, we've really collapsed. And this morning, we really got small. We were underneath 10 points of range, right, for the last 2 days. So that's indicative of a balanced market, right? So we know in the range, immediately we'll know going forward that the first hour range is in excess of 20 points, or 20 in excess, I guess, of 15 points. We'll know that we're going to look for a directional move at some point through the course of the day. If we open up with a small trading range, and at this point small trading range is defined as 10 points or less, we know that we're going to usually have balance, right? And balance is defined by, if we look at the prior day, trading just below prior day's low, pushed back in, and of course we never made it back up to the prior day's high, right? So I think here what I wanted to communicate was I already knew that we were having we were in for a difficult day. We were finding responsive sellers in ES in the first hour. We were finding responsive buyers in NQ. NQ was not following ES. And so what ended up happening is we ended up having a bunch of essentially scalps in the AM where we were taking small little trades. They were actually decent, right? They were giving 2.5 points worth of P&L, but it was really just hard to hold through this. And what I wanted to communicate even more, guys, was the last couple of weeks have been so good, right, that mentally making that shift to, hey, let me back off. Why do I want to back off? Because now what I'm naturally looking for, or what I'm trying to avoid, what I'm looking for is a directional move. What I'm trying to avoid is getting clipped in the middle of the range. Now, with that being said, right, I still ended up getting clipped today. After I was done with the morning, I had about 4.5 in the bag, and look at this drive on NQ right over New York lunch, right? We drive all the way to the other end of the range, and it appears we're going to break out, right? We come to the open gap. There's so little space between Friday's high and the open gap, you figure we're going to blow right through it. And what the plan was, is I said, hey, when we come back through here, right, it looks like we've broken the downtrend that was started late Friday. I thought a 50-60 retrace off this extension to the top of the range would give us great trade location for a push back to the upside. Looking for a replay, I believe, of last Wednesday or Thursday, right? Well, sure enough, we get the retrace, and what else? And so I had a very specific plan here. First of all, I had mixed emotions. I knew we were in balance. I knew this was the middle of the range imbalance, and if we break down, I was going to get smoked. I already knew that, right? This is really important because they say as a trader, if you read, the best trades you make are the ones that you take stops on, the ones you take your losses on, and how you control yourself, how you manage your losers, define you as a winning trader, right? So we came down here, and I knew if we closed behind Globex low, right? If we were strong, I knew we wouldn't get anywhere close to Globex low, but if we were weak, we would actually close underneath Globex low. So I took this trade at 1888. I ran it 2 ticks in front, so I was at essentially 1888.75 is where I took this long, right? And obviously we closed in, we pushed to the 62 retrace, we closed behind it, and as soon as we closed behind it, we dipped just below to 1885.50, and by the time I hit the exit button, we were actually 1884.75. I ended up taking 4-point stop on this trade, and it wiped my day out. Now, I don't like to highlight where I have difficulty or where I end up balanced, but what I did next was really, really important as a trader, okay? I was angry that I got stopped. I was angry because I took a trade in the middle of the range. I had been early in the day, I had a short that was actually lined up right in this area right here, where I had taken a 50-60 retrace right into this area right here, and I had pulled 2 points out of this short, right? And what I was looking for, although I couldn't read it very well, and I ended up covering it and then taking a stop on balance, was that we would roll over to the downside and come in and auction off this poorly auctioned area, right? That being said, I got 2 points, I got stopped on balance, no big deal, right? So what my thinking was here as well, it looks like due to the strengthening Q that we've had all day long, I kind of felt like I got suckered in. So when we swept through to the downside here, I obviously got stopped. Now, a lot of times what you'll see when people are running education rooms or trading rooms is they'll always want to talk about their winning trades, right? Well, I don't. I want to focus. I think where the most to learn is where things go wrong. How can I adjust? And what did I do right in that area? And this is what I did right. I was pissed when I took this stop here. It pretty much put me flat for the day after what was a pretty decent trading given the chop that we had in the morning. Had I allowed my anger to do anything other than dictate that I needed to get up and walk away from my trading screens, which I did. I left. I came back in the last hour. I could have sat here and fought both for a move back to the upside, right? And obviously you'll see we traded almost all the way back to my original entry point, right? However, I could have also insisted that I had several options here. I could have insisted we were coming back up and kept trying to force the long side trade. That would have chopped the daylights out of me. I wanted to turn around and short. That was my immediate emotional reaction. I was pissed. I probably at some intuitive level recognized that something was very, very wrong when we didn't get the response off of NQ over here at this point, right? But if you look at work by Dr. Stimbarger, Mark Douglas, any of the great trading coaches that are Andrew Menaker, who's my trading coach, any of those guys who are out there, they'll always say, once you're out of a neutral point from a emotional standpoint, a non-balanced point at looking at the market, and you feel flustered or frustrated, it is unlikely that you're going to make a decision that will lead to profitability on your next trade. As a matter of fact, what will usually happen is you'll get flustered, and since most men have a fight reaction, if you get pissed off, what you're most likely trying to do is get responsive trades all the way through here and try to force a long back to the upside, right? Or in my case, what I wanted to do was turn on and short it immediately. But look, we rolled for all the way from 1883 all the way back up to 1888. It was unlikely that I would have survived a 4 to 5 point rotation back up without getting stopped again and being further in the hole. And if you can imagine this, so go through and imagine what this is like, right? I'm flat on the day. I take another trade. I could have easily ended up being down 2 to 5 points in here, right? And at that point, I would have needed that from this 1885 to 1875, I would have needed 5 of those points just to get back to flat, right? I did myself a huge favor here by not trading in here. I didn't force a loss. I did not force myself to push into the last hour, which as a rule, A, I don't short the last hour of the day. It's majority of the time it's an unprofitable trade, right? And B, it's very, very hard to make longs work when you're whipping through the last hour as well, right? I simply prefer to make the majority of my money in the morning. And I said so before I took the trade. I said, this trade is very aggressive in nature. I've already got 4 points in the bag. And I got mad at myself because I could have just simply walked away with that 4 points and left for the day, right? The last piece, so by walking away, I didn't end up sitting here trying to force a long through any of this. This 1880 to 1878 was the support zone, and you can see we tried to hold support in there, right? Pauses in 1978, we get a doji in there, and then it finally flushes, right? Obviously, the 1870 to 1868 zone worked just fine, provided a response there. But if you look, we're poorly auctioned all the way down through here. If you look to the right, and I'm going to blow this up. Make sure everyone can see it. Look where I had the area that we were poorly auctioned, and look how poorly auctioned area goes. Rejection at the top of a poorly auctioned area. Second time in, attempted push back up, failed, and then look at the flush to the poorly auctioned area. My guess is at some point tonight we'll come down and test this 1863, 1861, and if I can get a shot at this backside area to return to the scene of the crime over here, I would really want to try and take an attempt at a short side trade in here overnight. I would look for responsive sellers in this area would be my general thought process up here. So 2 things. It was a frustrating day. NQ was leading, ES was not following. We were getting a lot of cross currents and we were in balance. And then the break at the end of the day occurred literally at the end of the day. It really would have been nice. How did this, so then the last question I have in my journal, right, it's been a while since I've done this. The last question in my journal is, well, how could I have done this better? I did the right things. I didn't dig a hole. Worst case scenario is I'm flat, and I've had a huge run over the last 3 weeks, right? So the adjustment that I want to make here, guys, how would have I liked to see this day play out a little bit nicer? Or even easy. Imagine this had been our opening trade here, right? This is what I would have wanted to see. Break, 50-60 retrace, right? Back up into this 1882 to 1885 area, right? And then a roll to the downside to close the open gap. That would have been preferable, right? It's just very different, and we're probably going to get some play on this, whether we come into the open gap first and then push up into this area overnight, or we push up and then we come down to close the open gap tomorrow. We're probably going to get some play or variation on that overnight. We'll just have to wait to see how they treat it in Asia, whether they sweep it straight down or they push it back up. for me, the easier play is to look for a 50-60 retrace into this area for a push lower, as opposed to trying to catch a falling knife on the downside for a push back up to 1880, that 1880 to 1885 trade location. So, what was learned from today? A, don't let emotions dictate how you trade. Take your stops per your trade plan, right? Even if they wipe out your day, right? Better to have a controlled down day than an out of control down day, right? It's only one trading day, no one trade, and no one day dictate how you'll do through the course of the year, right? And then B, don't forget to move as traders, we get very sucked in to a particular day of trading. Always remember to stay balanced and draw back, right? This year's already been a freaking awesome year in the room, right? We've had a great year. This one day doesn't matter, even if emotionally and intensity-wise, it's frustrating to see the rollover after you try to catch the short earlier in the day, and then you get swept after it looks like it's breaking to the upside. You get swept in the middle of the range on a balance day. You feel stupid. Still, follow the trade plan. Process the emotions, and then come back the next day and make money. So, anyways, I hope that helps some guys. That's how I looked at the trading day. Net flat for the day, which is fine. No big deal. Tomorrow should be very, very interesting. We're heading into the Fed this week. We also have earnings from Facebook and Apple Computer. It's going to be an interesting couple of days. Hopefully some very nice trading opportunities. Remember, overall, AM easier than PM. If you bag your money in the morning, you may want to consider taking it and moving on to the next day, because at the end of the day, what this is all about is taking P&L out of the market, not being right about which way the market's going to go, or not being the best at figuring out the entire puzzle, but just that little piece that you need to put money in your pocket on a day-by-day basis. I really believe you only need 1 to 2 points in profit a day, and hopefully I'm able to achieve that tomorrow. Since I gave that away here at the end of the day, I will hopefully be back on track and building on the P&L for the year first thing in the morning. So hope everyone has a great night. I'll talk to you all tomorrow.